side. But in these cities that are really mega cities, and every place that I've been has a mega, ultra advanced in terms of technology and architecture. So that was just really, really surprising. And the other, well, I'd say the other good thing about traveling has been, I know for certain in Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia, I ate more vegetables in 3 months than I probably had eaten in 3 years because they start out their meals with vegetables. But anyway, I have a question. Yeah, I mean, it was working out really well, but things seemed to shift once I got to Malaysia. Not as many vegetables on the front end of eating a meal. But let me ask you something else. Is there something that you wish that you had known or had considered before moving or traveling to Southeast Asia? Something that you wish you knew or was aware of before your travels began? I'm throwing that back over to you, Janice. Anything you can think
I
of?
think I think the one thing, when I came, I only came to be here temporarily for 2 years. So I packed up my apartment and put it in storage. We're still in storage, unfortunately, and I'm still paying for it. I think one of the things, had I known, would have been how difficult it was for me to find certain clothes items and certain toiletry items over here. When I first came, I had dreads, so trying to find the right kind of oils and stuff that I needed for my hair, that was a challenge. Trying to find shoes was a challenge. Trying to find clothes that fit me, because the clothes here are different size, their sides differently than they are in the United States. And so if you go into a store, if you, as you know, you've been here, you ladies have been here, you buy something from a vendor or Chatterchuck or something like that, well, taking it back, trying to get your money is not going to work, because they don't do that here. A lot of
Mhm,
times you can't try clothes on. You just
mhm,
have to kind of eye it and say, I pray that this fits. But I think that was a big challenge for me. I think had I known I was going to be here longer, I probably would have bought some more clothes for myself. But I was only going to be here 2 years. So I think, okay, I don't need all of this stuff. I'm only going to be there 2 years and come right back. So the
mhm.
biggest challenge, and it was not that, it's not that there weren't malls. As you know, Jill, malls here are on steroids. They just
Oh,
opened up another one down the street,
oh
right
my.
next to right next to Emporium. They opened up another mall just last week. So I think clothing items and certain toiletry items were my biggest challenge when I first got here. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not gonna, I'll save mine for afterwards as far as my most, something that I should have considered. Tikiera, what about you? Something that you wish you had considered before starting your travel?
Yes, I think I didn't take into consideration the impact the heat would have on my hair. And my hair went through a very, very serious rough patch. And I didn't bring as much of my hair care products that I now I know I need. So I am literally down to the last, and I'm just like, what am I going to do? Now I have to, I guess, experiment with natural hair care products here. And I'm a bit nervous and scared about the impact that will have. My hair like seriously dried out, and we had to, my aunt and I were going back about like what are natural things that we can utilize to like restore softness back to the hair. So we've done banana hair mask and things like that. So like I've been trying things, but as far as like shampoo and conditioner, um, I'm a bit nervous about that part. And then chapstick. Like I am very particular. Very particular about, my lip care. Like chapstick is my thing. And it's just like I'm struggling to find that. So it's like I put emphasis on the wrong things, like, making sure I had enough clothes, shoes, like my outfits matter, like I gotta be matched from top to bottom. And then I didn't really pay much attention to like what my hair, what my skin and what my lips will need. So I mean, that'll be the next learning curve. So we shall see how that plays out. But yes. That is the one thing I did not consider, and I would, anybody who's traveling to Southeast Asia, they should definitely prioritize those things.
You know, it's funny because another young lady who's traveling, who's an expat, she's living in the island of Mauritius, but she had made the comment, because I asked her before I left, what does she do about hair care? She's like, oh, I use what's in the kitchen, olive oil, olive oil.
Mhm.
And I remember when I was a little girl, my mother, when she washed our hair, she would heat up olive oil, and that's what would go on our scalp and our hair. So I bought olive oil for my hair.
I'm excited.
Anyway, yeah, right out of the kitchen. Alicia, one or two things that you wish you had thought of
The
before.
thing, the main thing I think of is the upfront cost. In Lao, at least, the place that I lived in required a year of rent in advance.
Mm,
And I just did not have that money, having just finished grad school. So I had to take out an advance with my employer, which meant that my paychecks after that were reduced, but I had somewhere to live. Um, And that also meant that while the other expats that lived in the city that I did were traveling and doing fun things in their first year and visiting neighboring countries, I didn't leave the small city that the small town that I was in at all, except for a visa run my first year. And I felt like the poor expat. And my second year it was better because I didn't like I found a different living situation. I only had to pay 6 months in advance. I had some money saved. But just on a very practical level, if I was, as I think about moving back to the region, actually, I think about what kind of finances I would need up front to secure housing.
well, you know, speaking of housing though, I was, before leaving the States, to travel to start my travel, my rent had increased. I'll say I was in Georgia, the Atlanta, Georgia area. So my rent increased from $17.95 a month to $25.15 a month. Now, if I was spending that kind of money in any of the countries that I've been to so far, it would be a luxury
Mm.
mansion.
Mm.
Because, you know, everyone probably does it a little differently, but because I mainly use Airbnbs. And the Airbnb price range that I use or have been using is about anywhere between $15 and $25 a day. So that's what I've found. But, you know, I've heard that you can rent even far less than that. But of course, it depends on the other amenities that you know, want in your place of residence. But when I think about what I was paying and what I would pay to rent or continue renting in Atlanta, it would be a whole different residence type in Southeast Asia. But let me ask you another broader question. Feel free to share where you're living or where you're traveling to next. But has there been any life lessons that you've learned since traveling? Anything that's kind of really impressed you as far as a life lesson?
Hmm. I think for me, the life lesson would be that even though here in Thailand, you run across some of every culture, and I have to say, I don't think there's a culture I have not run across in Thailand. But I think one of the life lessons I've learned is that people will treat you the way that you treat them. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter the language. Even if you can't speak the language and you act friendly or you try to help them with directions, people will treat you the way that you treat them. And I think the biggest life lesson I've learned is if you were not born of Thai parents and mother and father and born and raised in Thailand, you are a foreigner. Doesn't matter what you look like, you're a foreigner. It doesn't matter what language you speak. You can speak Thai fluently, but if you are not born and raised and have Thai parents, you are a foreigner in Thailand. And that's
Mm.
one of the biggest. You can go to any other country and, you know, they don't necessarily call you a foreigner, but here you are a foreigner in Thailand. And that was one of the biggest life lessons that I've learned. Yeah. You can
So,
be here 50
yeah.
years and still be a foreigner.
But are you treated any differently?
It's
Or,
not obvious, but sometimes you'll go someplace and they'll charge you more if you're a foreigner than if you're a Thai. I went to the sea aquarium at Icon Paragon, you know, you went over there, and I paid a different price than a Thai person paid. You can ride the MRT for a senior citizens rate because I'm 72, but I can't ride the BTS for a senior citizen rate because I'm not Thai. And if you kind of notice, and it's not very obvious, but I have noticed it. If you're walking down the street with, say, a Thai person or something, like one of my Thai friends or something, and there's a person on the street begging for money, they will ask the foreigner and not ask the Thai for money. And I noticed that. So some differences are very subtle and some differences aren't very subtle, but there are some differences, yeah.
Interesting.
And they do
Tikiera.
treat older people. Older people here are treated with respect. They do treat older people with respect here. So even if I'm on the BTS, and they have, you know, you've been on the BTS here, and they have that seat. They have that seat reserved for old people. If somebody's sitting there, most of it, not all the time, and I'm standing up, sometimes people will get up and let me have that seat, which makes my day.
You know, I just have to share. Remember, I mentioned that the traffic is really off the chain here in in the Philippines, where at least where I'm at. But it was at the mall and I couldn't get a taxi with the Grab app. You know, Grab is one of the things that it does is taxi service. And I'm like looking at this taxi line, you know, to hail it, and the line is just so long. And to your point, Janice, I look up and I notice on the sign, basically it shows if you're pregnant, disabled, or the elderly, then you go to the front of the line, right? So I'm like, I don't think I'm pregnant. No, I'm definitely not pregnant. Okay. But anyway, I go over to the security guard and and so he looks at the sign, you know, trying to signal to me, you know, and I said, but my knee hurts because it really did. And I said, and I'm 60 years old. I tell you, Janice, I had a taxi like in 5 minutes. There is a respect that is given to older people here I've seen it throughout the Southeast Asian countries.
And people are very much aware of it. I was walking down my soy with my friend, a friend on Sunday, and I had all these bags, and she said, "Give me your bags." I said, "Well, they're not heavy." She said, "No, but you know," and she's tired. She said, "With older people, you're supposed to treat them with respect and carry their bags. So if people see you walking with all these bags, and I'm just walking beside you, they're going to think that I don't have any respect for my elders."
Oh, wow.
So, you know, she's like, you know, it's what we're supposed to do, you know. And even when I come in my building, the maids like rush right away and take my bags and take them upstairs. So here they have a very huge respect for older people, which works for me.
Yes, filial piety. I think that's
Yes.
filial piety.
Right, exactly. It works for me, Jill.
Worked for me just a couple of days ago. Was that yesterday? Yeah, what is it? It was yesterday. Yesterday.
Maybe it'll work tomorrow when you go to immigration. See.
Oh, I hope so. Put me to the front of the line. Tikiera, sorry about that. As I digress, Tikiera.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. I don't know, like I've had a lot of life lessons, but I guess that's just because of my starting point. But I would say like the one thing that I've learned that as I stick with it, it's proven itself to be true is that your mindset matters. And it definitely impacts the world around you. I think about who I was when I left, and I wouldn't say I was operating solely from a negative space, but I think just so much had happened that it was hard to like not see the negative. And then you know, I go to Malaysia and it's like it's starting to break itself, like that mindset. And then as I progress through my travels, I'm opening myself up more to, you know, whatever God has coming my way. And I'm learning to like see things and embrace things for what they are. Learning to operate from a place of hope and joy and gratitude. And it's just like, wow, what a difference Bangkok has been versus Malaysia. And I compared the two because Malaysia, I went to KL, which is like big city, so much happening. And then, you know, went to Da Nang, which is, I guess, a big city for them, but it's not in comparison to KL. And then now I'm back in Bangkok, and I think I was so afraid, I guess, in KL, like, oh, this may happen to me and all this other stuff. Um, and then here I'm just like, you know, what is the likelihood of any of those things happening? The shift in mindset has totally changed this leg of my trip, and I'm just out and about more. I am making friends. I am talking to people more, and it's just like I'm looking like, who are you at this point? Like, I don't even know this person. It's like it's two different people, and it's the shift in my mindset to just welcoming and embracing life for everything that it has to offer that has changed my reality.
So I think that's what it should be about. It's not just traveling for a vacation experience, but for a life, even life transforming experience. Awesome, awesome. Alicia, one or two things.
I'll just share one because I feel like I shared one in a previous answer that I gave, but I found living in Southeast Asia to be really helpful to me in coming to love the color of my skin. Actually, I had felt like in my family, I'm the lightest colored person among my siblings and my parents. And I think I had carried a lot of negative feelings about my skin color before, even though I was the lightest. I just felt like uncomfortable in my skin. Um, and it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be lighter, but I didn't want to do anything that would make me darker. And I think that's part of why I didn't like hot weather. I just wanted to stay the lightest in my family. And I went to Laos, and I mean, I think this is true for a variety of places in Southeast Asia. There are a lot of really dark Asians in Southeast Asia. And I remember looking actually at my boss and being like, wow, her skin is so beautiful. And then being like, wait, her skin is the same color as my skin. Like we are the same color. Why is her skin beautiful, but I have these feelings about my skin? Um, and so I think I started to like embrace being a dark person. I mean, I'm not like dark by like necessarily black standards, but I think um I just grew up in mostly white spaces. And even living in China, I was surrounded by people who were much lighter than me. And so I think being around other dark people that weren't my family who I found their skin beautiful was really like freeing and enlightening for me, which maybe that's a bad answer, but that was really like one thing that I got from my time there, just being around other people who were dark. Even if they
Interesting.
weren't black, they were dark.
But you know, that's so interesting because I know particularly when I got to Cambodia and Malaysia, there are people who are Cambodian and Malaysian, I'm sure in the other countries as well, who are darker, much darker than my skin color. But you know, I guess there's also a lesson, and I heard that even how the race, you know, white or Caucasian, black, you know, how those categories got formed. But I just noticed, I was like, there are lots of people who are from other countries who I don't know what they classify themselves at, but their skin color is darker than mine. I mean, it was just an observation.